Welcome to Meet the Boss Junior. Today I'm speaking with you, David Dennis, CEO of 5P. First question, you might know I love cars. What's your favorite car?
Well, that's a great question to start off, a good icebreaker. So my favorite car is an Aston Martin DBS.
Ooh, I saw one of those like yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, they're pretty cool cars.
Think back to when you were a kid. What did you want to do when you grew up?
Well, see, this is a really interesting question because I remember very distinctly when I was probably about 6 years old or 7 years old being asked that question a lot. And I used to answer that question all the time. I want to be a businessman just like my dad. And interestingly enough, my father, who is actually a pioneer of the IT industry here in Australia, so back in the 70s, he had 140 staff spread across Auckland, Los Angeles, Sydney, and Melbourne, running a system integrator and IT consulting firm. So that's what I wanted to do.
I want to hear all about your work, but first tell me a story. How did you become a CEO?
Okay, so that's a good question. Oftentimes, what happens, I guess, sometimes becoming a CEO is not necessarily by design. Sometimes it happens by accident, and this didn't necessarily happen by accident. But when we first started 5P, so that was 10 years ago, there was another CEO. So there was somebody else that was in the role, and we were 3 years into the business, and then the business, I was the COO, so I was basically the operating officer doing all of the nitty gritty hard work. And we had an investor come in to take over the business, also to put some investment funding into the business and help us grow. And when that investor came in, he wanted to make a change in leadership, and felt that the current structure didn't suit. And the CEO at the time stood down, and they appointed me the CEO. So I didn't actually walk into that, and this was all done in one meeting. And I didn't actually walk into that meeting with any particular design to be able to become the CEO. But by the end of that meeting, I was the CEO. So that's how it happened. And to be honest with you, how it happened was a lot of really hard work. Really, really hard work.
Tell me about your company. What is your product and who are your customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 5P is a Microsoft system integrator, and now transitioning to becoming an ISV. So we're traditionally we were a system integrator, looking after two of the main platforms for Microsoft. One being business applications and modern workplace. So if you think about Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, those sorts of things, and then Dynamics. And quite recently, over the last 3 years, we've been transitioning to what we call a product-led organization, and that's led us to building some SaaS solutions that help solve the most common problems that we find. We've got 3 solutions in market at the moment. One's called Navigator, which is a governance tool to help teams deploy and manage, or organizations to deploy and manage teams effectively. The other one is Tabay, which is a resource center that's baked into Teams that provides a vehicle for organizations to secure company-wide resources and make them available to staff. And the third one, which is the one that's probably the most exciting for us, is our product Barre. And Barre is a role-based communication tool, which is a really interesting concept, because just like we're on right now, every single peer-to-peer messaging application in the world at the moment relies on you knowing who the person is that you want to be able to communicate with. But in a healthcare setting, very often you don't know who it is that you want to be able to communicate with, but you know the role. So we've built a solution that's baked into Teams that allows individuals to be able to communicate with roles rather than individuals. So they're our 3 main products. and our target markets, our primary market is the health industry, but we also do a lot of work in retail and also in financial and professional services.
What do you love
That's
most
us.
about your job? Oh, sorry.
What I love most about my job? Well, so in the last 3 years, I've had the highlights of my professional career have happened in the last 3 years. So the three greatest things, and two of them have been receiving global recognition from Microsoft for the work that we do in the community and helping the community. So the solutions that we've built at the moment have had a really positive impact at one particular organization called Austin Health, where we're able to help them support the deployment of teams to 8,500 users in 2 weeks during the pandemic, which made a massive difference to their ability to be able to provide quality patient care. And the second one is an organization called Hope Street that provide services to at-risk youth, and we were able to deploy our Navigator and Tabay solution for that organisation. And what that's enabled is that their field workers are able to more proactively assist at-risk youth. So both of those things, oftentimes when you're in a technology space, you're building solutions that I don't know, help a bank make more money, or an insurance company provide better services, or whatever it may be. But what the work that 5P is doing is helping the community. And so that ability to be able to have technology better enable us to support our community, our country, that's what gets me up every day and drives me. I absolutely love it.
So what's the hardest thing about your job?
So when you're the CEO, the buck stops with you. So I think probably the hardest thing for me is to make sure that I'm effectively managing the team. There's the financial responsibility. You have to make sure that everyone gets paid every month. That's your number one responsibility as a CEO. And so managing your time effectively and making sure that you're focused on the things that are going to support the mission, vision, and values of the business, and support your people is the hardest thing to do.
So what's one piece of advice for me as I think about starting my own company?
Right. So I've thought about this question a little bit, and I was watching Lost on the weekend, which is a show you probably know nothing about, but I'm certain your dad does. And there's a character called Jack in there, and he talks about he's actually a physician. So he does spinal surgery, and he talked about being afraid. And so I think one of the things that you have to accept if you're going to start your own business is that you have to accept that there's going to be moments where you're going to be afraid and you're going to be scared. But I think the most important thing to do is to give yourself the space to be scared. So, count to 5, decide that for the next 10 seconds, you're going to be afraid. But then at the end of that 10 seconds, you're going to put that fear aside and you're going to march forward with whatever it is that you need to do. So I think the piece of advice that I give you is, one, if you're going to start your own business, make sure it's adequately funded. So having funding at the outset makes a huge difference. I would make sure that you have some mentors to guide you. So sometimes being a CEO can be pretty lonely, and having good peers and mentors to be able to provide you advice and help you take a step back from the business is really positive. And the third thing is coming back to fear. I would make sure that you understand that you're going to have some courage to be able to be a CEO, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And sometimes that can be scary, but that's okay. And that fear is okay, and it's long as you don't let it debilitate you. So it's not about not being scared; it's about being able to embrace the fear and move forward. So that would be the piece of advice that I would give you. And the other thing I would do say is, or the last thing I'd say is, go for it. Go for it. It's okay to fail. It's okay. I've made so many mistakes running this business, so many mistakes. And I would say that most successful CEOs and entrepreneurs have made mistakes. They haven't all got it right from the very start. So the first thing I would say is just have the courage to go out and have a go, because if you fail, it's okay. You can, get up, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go for it. So that wasn't one piece of advice. It's probably about 10 pieces of advice. So I'm sorry about that, Liam.
That's even better.
Awesome.
Looks like that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing your story. Best of luck with your future. Bye.